Hi, I'm Elinor Trier and I'm a contemporary British artist living and working in Copenhagen in Denmark. I work mainly in acrylic on canvas these days, but I also dabble extensively in other media as well. Whatever takes my fancy and will best convey the idea that I'm trying to express. I was brought up in an artistic household and my mum was a keen amateur artist, so I was always surrounded by art. I was super creative as a child, but I ended up concentrating more on writing than painting in my teens and 20s. In my early 30s, however, I was well and truly bitten by the creative bug and started using art to help me through a period of poor mental health. I did a year-long art project called the Gratitude Project, which turned into a book and then later an exhibition as well, and also kick-started a brand new career for me as an illustrator. I did that for a number of years and I enjoyed it very much, but eventually I burned out from forcing my creativity into the boxes made by other people. I decided to take a break then to concentrate on developing my own artistic practice. And this also coincided with getting a diagnosis of both autism and ADHD. Mental health plays a huge role in my art practice. So like I said, I am autistic and I also have ADHD. And my art is steeped in my experience of my neurodivergence. To put it another way, my experience of the world is probably quite different from yours. And I use my artwork to try and bridge that gap between us and find the common ground. Often my work will express something that I would struggle to articulate or even, identify without it. The biggest themes in my work have been around connection, alienation, and safety. And a lot of that stems from growing up undiagnosed and therefore being horribly misunderstood, not only by the people around me, but by myself as well. And it's only now that I have the capacity to unpack a lot of the trauma that I experienced. And I use my artistic skill to transform those feelings into something that is both resonant and beautiful. It's an extremely cathartic experience for me, and also means that people tend to have strong emotional reactions to my work. My biggest influences, oh my goodness, there are so many. Although I have a degree in art history, I have spent the last decade or so supplementing that education by learning about all the female artists that were left out, and they are so much more interesting to me than the men. So I'd say my biggest influences are Suzanne Valadon, Sonia Delaunay, Leonora Carrington, Leonor Finney, Dorothy Iannone, Alice Neal, Yayoi Kusama. And then more contemporary influences, I'd include Ashley Longshaw, Dana Schutz, Emily Powell, and Sandy Hester. There are a couple of men who I'd include on that list too. Hockney, of course. Noel Fielding, his painting work is amazing, and Quentin Blake. And his painting is largely unknown, but his figure work is just utterly delicious. And I'm nearly always drawn more to illustration than to more traditional painting, but I love anything that has a bit of wonk, a bit of character, a bit of wibbly-wobbly edges. At the beginning of 2021, I decided to focus on transitioning back into being a professional artist, but this time doing it entirely on my own terms. So most of my attention is currently on business building and developing several different income streams to supplement painting sales. I'm actually just about to launch a behind the scenes YouTube channel. Depending on when this video is published, it may have already launched, I don't know. And I'm also working on a number of business-focused resources for artists as well. Painting-wise, I'm currently in a bit of an ebb period, having completed more than 120 paintings at the end of last year. So I'm currently spending most of my studio time just playing and making a mess in my sketchbook. The biggest challenge of being an artist, wow, it's different for everyone, obviously, but I think mostly it boils down to learning to trust and be patient. You have to learn to trust your own creative process, your own instincts, and you have to trust the work. And you also have to be to learn how to be patient, whether you're trying to find an audience for your work, or you're trying to master a new skill, or you're just waiting for layers to dry before you can move forward with a piece. When it comes to being an artist, it really is all about the process and understanding that matters more than getting to any kind of fixed destination. What advice would you give to your younger self? Stop pushing away the desire to paint and draw and make things and telling yourself you're not creative. I think that sums it up in a nutshell. Have you ever tried any unconventional mediums or techniques? I often work with my fingers, and I'll use all sorts of weird objects to make interesting marks. So from wallpaper scrapers to cutlery to bits of old netting or fabric, or even like fruit and veg out of the fridge. I do love an onion print. Yeah. Do you listen to music or have any other type of background noise while you work, or do you prefer complete silence? It really depends on my mood and what stage of the painting I'm at. If I've just cracked open a fresh canvas, then I like music, and I find that what I'm listening to will influence the marks that I'm making. If I'm further along in the process of making a painting, then I love to listen to podcasts or an audiobook. Anything that sort of will pull my attention away from what I'm doing a little bit, so I don't start tightening up or overthinking, and I can just work with bypassing my brain and just getting, communing with the paint. What's the best reaction someone has had to your artwork? A friend of mine saw some of my work in person for the first time, and I was really nervous to show it to her. And she stood in front of it for ages, and I was getting a bit worried. And then all of a sudden she turned to me, and she had tears in her eyes, her eyes were shining. And she said, "I don't know the proper art words, but when I see your work, it makes my tummy feel whooshy with joy." And since then, that's been the benchmark as the best reaction I could hope for to somebody seeing one of my pieces. What do you hope people take away from your artwork? I want them to feel joy. Like, sometimes people even gasp or they might laugh out loud. I want them to have a rich emotional experience. I want them to feel like the more they look at the work, the more they see and the more it draws them in. My work really, the more time you spend with it, the better it gets. Thank you so much for your time and allowing us to share your world. Please let us know of any upcoming events and your social handles. So if you'd like to hear more from me, including when my new YouTube channel launches and the business resources for artists, then the best thing to do is to come over to my website, which is elinortrierstudio.com, and sign up for my monthly emails. That's where all the good stuff is. You can also find me on Instagram at Elinor Trier Studio, but I'm not very active over there, so signing up for the emails is your best bet. Thank you so much for having me.